They told her she didn't belong, asked if she was lost, escorted her out of her own city hall before she could even reach the podium. But when the cameras started flashing, and she finally stepped back in, flanked by state officials, the same officers who shoved her outside realized who they'd just humiliated. She wasn't some confused visitor. She was the new mayor, and this city was about to change. The lobby was too bright, ceiling lights hummed above sterile tile, and the walls wore a beige that seemed determined to erase memory. She stepped through the double glass doors without slowing, without glancing up at the receptionist behind the counter. Her heels clicked with the rhythm of someone used to walking into rooms that weren't built for her. No one looked twice. Her hair was pulled back tight, edges brushed and clean. A soft navy coat hugged her shoulders, and beneath it, a pale grey blouse, uncreased, unsmiling. The leather folder in her left hand bore no seal, no crest, just a single golden clasp holding everything together. She passed the metal detector. It beeped faintly. No one stopped her. They assumed things. Quiet assumptions wrapped in uniforms and glances. She knew this building well, though not from the inside. Knew the old bricks that lined the outer facade. Knew the second-floor window that always leaked light, late into the night when budget season rolled around. But this was her first time stepping into the heartbeat of it. No guided tour, no welcome banner. Just her, breathing steady, counting the echo of her steps. A man passed her in the hallway, tall, grey coat, lanyard swinging. He gave her the kind of nod reserved for interns. She nodded back, expression unreadable. Ahead, the council chamber door loomed. Brass handle, frosted glass, a plaque with the city's name etched in steel. The space beyond it was where her next hour would unfold. She reached for the door. Then, a voice. "Ma'am." It wasn't rude. Not yet. Just puzzled, like someone trying to place a name they never learned. She turned slowly. A uniform stood 10 feet away, hand resting on his belt, not hostile, not friendly. "You need help finding someone." She paused, just enough to watch the moment stretch. "No." Her voice was calm, smooth, the kind that didn't rise, didn't shrink, just existed, like stone in a rushing stream. Another officer appeared, younger, curious, watching her like a puzzle he was trained to solve. "This floor's restricted to staff today," the first one said. She glanced past him. The door to the chamber was just 12 steps away. "I have business here," she said. The second officer stepped closer. "You lost." She looked at him for the first time, really looked, and then just smiled. Not even slightly. But she didn't press forward. Not yet. Let them write the next lines of the scene. Let them believe what they wanted to believe. Because the moment wasn't ready. And neither were they. The air shifted before the voices came. Heavy boots echoed down the hallway behind her. Too steady, too purposeful to be anything but uniform. "Excuse me, miss." She stopped. One officer flanked her right. The other drifted to her left. Not aggressive, not casual, just close enough to remind her they could be. The older one had lines around his mouth from frowning too much. The younger one, clean-shaven, still carried the eager weight of someone trying to impress someone else. She turned, calm. Yes. They didn't answer immediately, just assessed quick glances at her coat, her hands, the folder. "You headed somewhere?" the older one asked. She blinked. "Yes." A pause. Then, "You got a meeting or something?" "Something. I do." The younger one took a small step forward. "With who?" She smiled faintly. "That will be clear soon." The first officer crossed his arms. "This area's for city staff only. You need clearance to be past the lobby." Her eyes didn't flinch. "I'm aware. Then you'll understand if we ask for a name," the younger one said, a little sharper. She didn't give it. Not yet. Because they weren't asking to confirm. They were asking to validate. And she didn't need validating. "I'm where I need to be," she replied. The silence thickened. The older one shifted. "Look, we're not trying to cause trouble, but you can't just walk in here and expect to go wherever you want." She raised an eyebrow. "Can't I?" The folder in her hand never moved. Still closed. Still quiet. The younger one smirked. "We've had a few folks try to sneak into council meetings lately. Protesters. Reporters." His eyes flicked to her shoes, her coat, her skin. "I'm not here to protest," she said. "Then what are you here to do?" She tilted her head slightly, not in defiance, in patience. To lead. That made them pause, just long enough to register the weight of the word. But before either could respond, the older one gestured back down the hall. "Let's just step outside, Mum. This isn't the place for confusion." She didn't move, didn't raise her voice, didn't reach for her badge, just stood there, still, like the calm before a city-wide storm. And with every second they misjudged her, the reckoning grew a little closer. Her shoes barely made a sound against the tile now. The younger officer walked half a step ahead, gesturing loosely but with purpose. The older one stayed at her side, not touching but close enough that the message was clear. "This way, ma'am." His voice was flat, professionally distant, not rude, not warm, just clipped, like he was reading from a tired policy manual. "No visitors allowed today," the younger one added, almost under his breath, like the rule had been invented just now to suit the moment. She didn't reply, didn't ask why, didn't need to. They passed the same neutral walls, the same framed photos of city officials, mostly men, mostly white, lined in gold trim that dulled under fluorescent light. She let her eyes linger on one for half a second longer. A former mayor, mid-smile, mid-handshake, mid-something, framed legacy on a borrowed wall. The officers didn't notice. At the security desk, the receptionist looked up, eyebrows twitching in mild confusion, as if wondering what she'd done to need an escort. The older officer nodded at her. She was headed to the chamber. The receptionist blinked. "Oh," but didn't say more. The elevator chimed somewhere behind them. A cart rolled by with 3 folders and a coffee cup, balanced on top. The mundanity of government in motion. She walked calmly. No resistance. No delay. Just observation. She watched how their eyes darted between her and each other. How their gait quickened the closer they got to the exit. Like they were eager to get this done before someone more important noticed. They reached the glass doors. Outside, the city breathed with late morning indifference. A jogger passed by, earbuds in. A maintenance worker swept the courthouse steps. One of the officers pushed the door open. The other held it. She stepped through. No words exchanged. No glances back. And yet, everything had been said. The doors whispered shut behind her. Inside, they returned to their posts, probably already forgetting the shape of her face. But she remembered everything. Their stance, their tone, the ease with which they assumed she didn't belong. And in that moment, standing once again on public concrete with a leather folder still closed in her hand, she didn't feel angry. She felt ready, because they thought they'd escorted her out of power. But all they'd really done was escort her into it. She stood on the top step, still. The city moved around her, slow, indifferent. A bus sighed at the corner. Pigeons fluttered near the flagpole. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm chirped, and fell silent. Behind her, the glass doors hissed shut. The 2 officers didn't look back. Not once. They moved like it was done. Like whatever disruption she'd represented had been neutralized. Contained. Filed away under "not today." The younger one muttered something. The older one nodded. A job handled. A box checked. They disappeared down the hall. She didn't chase them. Didn't wave her badge. Didn't shout her name. She just watched. And in the stillness, she saw what they hadn't. Their own ease. The quiet certainty that they had read her right. That she was just another someone in the wrong place. Just another woman who needed redirection. The kind of certainty that didn't question itself because it never had to. She let that linger. Let the truth of it settle across her shoulders like a second coat. Then she turned, slowly, and looked out across the city she now led. The morning haze had begun to lift. Sunlight cut sharp lines along the courthouse windows across the square. She took one step down, then another, each one deliberate, measured, not because she was unsure, but because she already knew what came next. The press would arrive soon. The governor's aide was probably in the car by now. There were cameras being tested, a mic being clipped to a lapel, but all that was still noise. This quiet moment, where 2 officers returned to their posts, thinking the day was back to normal. This was what mattered, because they believed the story had already been written, that she had been turned away, that whatever she came for hadn't happened. But they were wrong. It had already begun. Not with a parade, not with a speech, with a look, with a silence, with the unspoken understanding that everything they thought they'd handled was still walking down those steps, unbothered, unreadable, and absolutely undeniable. She didn't need to be remembered yet. They would remember her soon enough. The wind picked up on the steps. She closed her eyes for just a breath, and it took her back. Not to one moment, but to many. Doorsteps that never opened, phones that rang out, then never called back, yard signs she printed with her own money. Some stolen before sunrise, others defaced in quiet corners of the city no one talked about. "You're impressive," they'd say, smiling. "But maybe this isn't the right cycle." Like it would come around again. Like she should wait her turn. She remembered the town hall meeting in Eastview. The folding chairs were metal, the coffee cold, and the man with the microphone said it without blinking. "You're very articulate." He meant it as a compliment. The woman beside him leaned in after the meeting. Soft smile, perfume like powder. "I just think you should run for council first. Get your feet wet." She had nodded, not in agreement, but in discipline, because her feet had been wet. She'd stood in floodwater at 16, helping evacuate elders when no one else showed up. She'd patched roofs with her uncle, after storms, organized block cleanups on her own dime, helped draft tenant protection proposals before anyone thought she had the right to touch policy. But none of that fit the script they handed her. They asked if she was married, if she had kids, if she was tough enough for the job. Coded questions in polished voices. "How will you manage the budget? What's your stance on public safety?" She heard what they meant. "Can we trust you not to shake the table? Can you sit here without making us uncomfortable?" She remembered every handshake that held on just a little too long, as if trying to warn her, quietly, to stay small, and every headline that skipped her name, even when she'd won the debate. Still she kept showing up. Not with slogans, not with polished consultants, but with her folder, her facts, her full presence. People noticed. The tired nurse from Eastview, the second-grade teacher who'd almost quit, the sanitation worker who'd never seen a mayoral candidate show up to a union meeting. They saw her, and slowly, one vote at a time, she stopped being a long shot and started becoming something else, inevitable. Now the wind tugged at her coat. She opened her eyes again. City Hall still loomed behind her. The glass doors still reflected nothing, but she had already stepped through worse, and this city was already hers. The room was small, no stage, no seal on the wall, just white paint, a worn wooden table, and a single flag in the corner, but leaned ever so slightly left. 3 rows of chairs, most of them empty. She stood with her hand raised, palm steady, eyes fixed on the judge, not in reverence, but in clarity. A few state officials sat to one side, pens in pockets, folders on their laps. No cameras, no flashing lights, just a notary, with tired eyes, and a woman in a dark suit recording it all on a legal pad. It wasn't the kind of ceremony the city was used to. No speeches, no choir, no velvet chairs reserved for former mayors, who still lingered like echoes in back rooms. This one was different, deliberate, tactical, because she knew how stories got rewritten in real time, how a crowded room full of power and press could twist a moment until it didn't feel like hers anymore. So she kept it quiet, on purpose. No invitations went out, no social media countdown, just a call to the judge she trusted, a nod from the governor's liaison, and a time 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. The oath came like a river, steady, well-worn. She repeated every word without hesitation, not because she'd practiced, but because she'd lived them. To faithfully execute the duties of mayor, to the best of my ability. Her voice didn't rise. It settled, like roots planting themselves deeper. When it was over, there was no applause. Just the scrape of a chair as someone stood to shake her hand. One of the aides reached for a photo. She declined. Not today. There would be time for that. Right now it wasn't about the optics. It was about the work. She signed the final form. The judge handed her a small envelope with the official seal. And that was it. No fanfare. No interviews. Just a title now inked beside her name. She walked out alone. The hallway hummed with old fluorescent lights and the smell of printer toner. Outside, the sky was flat grey. But she felt no need for sun, because while others waited for the spotlight to make them real, she had already become the thing they couldn't ignore. The sun had climbed a little higher, not bright, just enough to cut clean shadows along the sidewalk. She walked with her coat unbuttoned. Now, same heels, same folder, but this time she wasn't alone. The governor's aide matched her stride. Grey suit, navy tie, clipboard tucked tight under one arm. Not here for ceremony, here for confirmation. Behind them, a small press group hovered like quiet weather. A cameraman adjusted his lens. A reporter whispered into a mic with practiced concern. They hadn't been told everything, just enough to know this wasn't background noise. As they reached the steps of City Hall, the aide cleared his throat once, almost out of habit. She didn't slow. Through the glass, she saw movement. Same security desk, same hallway, the same two officers. They looked up and froze. The younger one's jaw tensed first. The older one straightened. They stepped forward, almost automatically. Something in their posture shifted. Not quite fear, not yet, but close. This time, no one asked her name. No one asked where she was headed, because now they recognized what they hadn't seen the first time. Not a visitor, not a question mark, but the answer. The governor's aide stopped just inside the doorway, cleared his throat again, but this time loud enough to carry. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice even, "Mayor Naomi Pierce." It was soft, formal, and absolute. The hallway went still. A clipboard dropped somewhere behind the press. The receptionist's hand froze mid-type, and the officers, they didn't say a word. She stepped forward, past the badge, past the whispers, past the disbelief that clung to the walls like dust. Her heels clicked again, the same rhythm as before, only now, it sounded like something breaking, a silence they could never return to. She didn't look at them, not out of pride, out of precision, because what came next wasn't about them. It was about the office, and the power they tried to escort out, now holding the keys to the front door. The doors opened like they knew what was coming. The lobby was quieter than before, almost too quiet, like the building itself had held its breath. She stepped in first. The aide followed, voice already rising, clipboard tucked neatly against his chest like a shield. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, clear and practiced, "Mayor Naomi Pierce." It landed like thunder wrapped in velvet. No drum roll, no applause, just silence that cracked at the edges. The two officers were still by the reception desk. The same ones, same uniforms, same eyes, but different now. The younger one blinked too fast. His lips parted like he had something to say, then didn't. The older one's hand fell away from his belt. His posture shifted from firm to something that didn't have a name. She didn't look smug, didn't gloat, just stood in the space that now belonged to her. The press moved in slowly, like they weren't sure if this was real yet. Cameras rose. Flashes stayed off. For now, the receptionist sat back in her chair, fingers still hovering over a half-finished sentence. No one moved, because they all knew what had happened earlier that morning. Knew the quiet rumor that had already started rolling down office hallways. Knew that the woman they walked past, questioned, redirected, had never needed their permission to lead. And now she had the title to prove it. The aide said nothing more. He didn't need to. She stepped forward, 3 measured paces. Her coat shifted with each movement. The folder in her hand still closed. The officers straightened automatically, like their bodies hadn't caught up to the reality yet. The younger one swallowed hard. His gaze darted to the floor. The older one nodded. Too late, too small. She didn't nod back. Not from malice, from memory, because she remembered exactly how they'd looked at her before, and she wasn't going to let them forget. 1 heartbeat passed, then 2, and then she walked on, past the desk, past the shock, past the silence that now weighed more than any salute. She didn't need their words. She already had the moment. The marble didn't change. Same tiles, same lines of grout, same distant echo. But now, her footsteps cut through the air like punctuation. Click, 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 click. She walked past the officers without a glance. Didn't need to see their faces again. She already knew what was written on them. Disbelief, recognition, a quiet kind of fear that doesn't show in the mouth, but in the shoulders. The hallway stretched ahead like a held breath. Staff peeked out from doorways, some wide-eyed, some careful. A few stood straighter. Others shrank. No one spoke. She passed a wall of framed photographs. Former mayors, all suits, all smiles. None of them looked like her. She didn't slow down. The council chamber doors stood open now. Someone must have unlocked them when the press arrived. Funny, how quickly access changed once a title entered the room. She stepped inside. Rows of chairs. A long table at the front. Mics waiting. Flags behind it. Still as stone. Reporters followed behind her like shadows. Not too close. Not too loud. Watching everything. She walked to the podium like it belonged to her. Because now it did. Same heels. Same rhythm. But the sound hit different. It didn't just echo. It announced. She reached the podium. Placed the folder down gently. Took a breath. Not to calm herself. But to mark the moment. The clicks had stopped. But the silence they left behind. It spoke louder than anything she could say. She didn't clear her throat. Didn't tap the mic. Didn't ask if anyone could hear her. They could. The room was too quiet not to. She looked out at the faces. Council members. Department heads. Assistants with tight smiles. And tighter schedules. The officers who had walked her out now. Stood near the back. Still. Muted. One of them holding his hat like it was suddenly heavier. She didn't call them out. Didn't need to. She opened the folder slowly. Didn't look down. Just touched the paper once. A reminder. Not a crutch. Then she spoke. When I first walked into this building, she said, I wasn't recognized. A few glances exchanged. A cough held in. Not because I was late. Not because I lacked credentials. But because the people who saw me didn't really see me. She let that hang. Not like an accusation, but like a truth that refused to shrink. This city has a habit, she continued. A habit of deciding who belongs, before asking who they are. Still no names. Still no blame. But the discomfort thickened. She scanned the room once. Stopped nowhere. But saw everything. We talk about public safety, community trust, diversity. But too often, those are just words we print in brochures. Someone shifted in a chair. Another scribbled notes that didn't matter. I don't want this city to look at me and say, she made history. She paused. I want you to look at the next woman who walks through those doors. Any woman, any man, anyone at all, and not need a title before you offer respect. A few heads lowered, a few eyes locked with hers, and didn't blink. This city must start seeing people before judging them, she said. Simple, sharp, undeniable. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Clarity was louder than fire, and for the first time that morning, they really heard her. It started as a murmur. In the elevator, at the vending machine, between emails that were suddenly typed slower. Did you hear? She was the one they escorted out? No, the mayor. By noon, the press had their headline. Escorted, then elected. Naomi Pierce's quiet storm at City Hall. By 2 o'clock, a memo slipped across the desks of HR and legal, internal review. Immediate, unavoidable, the officers were placed on leave by the end of the day. Administrative, the statement read, pending investigation, but everyone knew it wasn't just about a protocol breach. It was about the moment the mask slipped and the badge didn't protect them from their own assumptions. The front desk receptionist started saying, "Good morning," with a little more care. The security guards straightened a little faster when anyone walked in, especially if they didn't recognize them. Suddenly people were checking names twice, checking tone 3 times. City Hall buzzed, but not with routine. Meetings felt different. Laughter in the break room died quicker. Hallway conversations lowered their volume, watched their words. The mayor's name was no longer an abstract headline or a calendar update. It was a presence, a mirror, a reminder. Naomi Pierce didn't gloat. She didn't mention the officers, didn't feed the press. She just kept showing up. Early, precise, calm. And that somehow unnerved them more. Because nothing rattles the old guard quite like a woman who doesn't flinch after she's been underestimated. Especially when she now signs their paychecks. The door shut with a soft click behind her. For the first time she was alone. No reporters, no aides, no hallway glances. Just the room, just the desk. It wasn't grand. The wood was scratched in places. One drawer stuck a little on the right. The chair squeaked if you leaned too far back. But her name was there now, etched in brass, centered, balanced. Mayor Naomi Pierce. She ran her fingers once across the edge of the desk, not for sentiment, for grounding. The office smelled faintly of old paper and lemon polish. The blinds were half open. The city blinked outside the window, its breath steady, unaware. She didn't sit right away. She placed her folder down, slid off her coat, rolled her shoulders once, quiet and deliberate. Then she sat. The chair groaned, then settled. She opened her laptop, not the ceremonial one on the side table, her own. Within seconds tabs filled the screen. Community complaint data, hiring policy drafts, budget line items circled in red from weeks ago, a spreadsheet of use of force incidents, color-coded by district. She didn't start with retribution. She started with structure, because systems don't crumble from anger. They bend when they're rewritten. She drafted a policy, mandated anti-bias training, not as a checkbox but as a tracked, peer-reviewed process. Monthly accountability reports, cross-referenced with community feedback. Anonymous channels for internal whistleblowers. Each line typed with precision. Each clause weighed like it could change everything. Because it could. An aide knocked once, offered coffee. She declined. Another dropped off a packet of press inquiries. She set it aside. The work wasn't in the optics. It was here beneath the headlines, beneath the moment. At 4:17 p.m., she signed the first executive directive, then printed it, initialed it, and slid it across the desk like the start of something no one could undo. Not punishment, policy. The difference, one ends with silence. The other builds a city. The change didn't come all at once. It came in footsteps that slowed when she passed, in voices that dropped mid-sentence, in doors that once stayed open, now gently clicked shut a few seconds after she walked by. Some staff greeted her with newfound warmth. "Good morning, Mayor Pierce." A little too cheerful. A little too late. Others nodded, tight-lipped, as if acknowledging gravity rather than leadership, and some didn't speak at all. But they all watched, in the copy room, in the elevator, from the other end of the hallway when she filled her own coffee cup. Watched how she moved, measured, present. Watched how she listened, eyes focused, not blinking more than she had to. They watched because they were still unsure. Not about who she was, about what she would do. Would she remember the silence? Would she dig into their emails? Would she call out the ones who smirked and said nothing the morning she was escorted out? She didn't. She let their discomfort live in its own skin. She nodded when greeted, spoke when needed, and held her own calm like a flame they couldn't blow out. Lieutenant Harper, who once forgot her name in a meeting, now used it in every sentence. "Mayor Pierce, if I may. Mayor Pierce, the draft's ready. Mayor Pierce, would you like to review?" She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't give more than a polite, precise response. Across the hall, two junior aides whispered near the bulletin board. They stopped when she approached. She said nothing, not because she didn't hear them, but because she did. In conference rooms, chairs subtly shifted when she entered. Some stood, some hesitated. One or two didn't move at all. She noticed it all. The respect, the resistance, the reshuffling of power not through rebellion, but through presence. She hadn't asked them to change. She had simply stopped making herself small. And now the building was adjusting. It started over coffee, old booths, worn linoleum, a jukebox that hadn't worked since 2014. "Did you hear?" someone asked, voice low over scrambled eggs. They escorted her out. Forks paused mid-air. A waitress leaned in from behind the counter, pouring decaf, like the story tasted better warm. She didn't even raise her voice. And now, a chuckle. Dry. "She's running the whole damn city." At the bus stop on Main, two mothers whispered beneath the rumble of diesel. That was her, right? Naomi Pierce. Said she just turned and walked out. Calm, calm, like she knew they'd find out the hard way. In the church vestibule, just after service, Deacon Roy stood near the door with his Bible and his knowing smile. "Justice," he murmured, "don't always come loud." He nodded once, like a truth had settled into the pews. Barbershop talk turned electric. She let them escort her, played it like chess, quiet. 3 moves ahead. A young man twisted in his chair, cape still around his neck. That's what power really looks like. At the laundromat, between cycles, a woman in slippers shook her head. They saw a black woman and assumed, didn't even ask her name. The dryer hummed. Well, now they know. The story moved without needing permission. Slipped through barbershops and bar stools, passed from cashiers to customers, echoed in Facebook threads and church group chats. It spread not because it was scandalous, but because it was familiar. They all knew someone who'd been questioned for belonging, pushed aside, looked past. But this time, the one they dismissed, came back holding the keys. And suddenly, everyone wanted to talk about the moment power didn't knock. It walked in, got walked out, and walked right back, in charge. The sky was soft with late light, that kind of gold that slips between buildings and makes the world look quieter than it is. She walked alone. No cameras, no aides. Just her and the slow rhythm of her heels on pavement. Same downtown streets. Same cracks in the sidewalk. Same chipped paint on the old bookstore window. But everything felt different now. A kid on a bike rode past, wobbling slightly, then looked back and grinned. "Hi, Mayor Pierce," he shouted, voice too big for his frame. She smiled. Just enough. "Hey there," she called back. He didn't slow down. Just kept pedaling, like the greeting had been a checkpoint he was proud to reach. At the corner, an older man sweeping his stoop gave her a nod. Not deep, not exaggerated, just respectful. Real. Further down, a woman crossing the street with grocery bags paused. "Thank you," she said. No context, no explanation, just that. Naomi didn't stop walking, didn't break stride, but the words lingered, not because they were rare, but because they weren't always spoken out loud. People saw her now, not just in the hallway, not just in the title, in the neighborhood, in the regular places power usually forgets. She passed the spot where she'd once handed out flyers in the rain. Ignored, smiled at, side-eyed. Past the bench where she'd sat after debates, collecting her thoughts with a plastic cup of coffee that tasted like doubt. She remembered every step, and now, those steps were hers. The sidewalk hadn't changed. The system hadn't rolled out any red carpet. But she didn't need one, because every inch of this walk, every glance, every nod, every wave from a porch, or whisper from a stoop, reminded her. She hadn't just taken office. She'd claimed space, with no apology, and no permission. The sun dipped lower behind the buildings, and she kept walking, straight, calm, unshakable, not to prove anything, just to remind the street that it had never truly known her walk until now. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of how often strength is misjudged, and how dignity can change a room before a word is spoken, don't let it end here. Share this story. Comment with your thoughts, your own moments of being underestimated, or the leaders who inspire you. Let it reach the people who've been told to wait their turn one too many times. Because real change doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it walks in quietly, heels steady, badge tucked away, and a whole city watching.